My name is Kira Lawson, and for the last 20 years, I've worked for the same company, Northbridge Systems, a software firm based in downtown Seattle. I started there when I was just 15 years out of high school, a young woman with big dreams, a gentle heart, and a belief that if you worked hard and treated people right, life would always be fair to you. That belief would be tested on the coldest Friday of my life. It began with a phone call. My manager, Mr. Blake Carter, a man whose suits always looked more expensive than his morals, called me into a meeting with HR. He didn't even sound nervous. His tone was light, almost smug. "Hey, Kira," he said through the intercom. "Can you come to conference room B10?" My heart skipped. 20 years at this company, and I'd never once been called to HR. I grabbed my notebook, straightened my gray cardigan, and walked down the hall, smiling at people who avoided my eyes. That should have been my first clue. When I stepped into the room, Blake was already there. So was Martha, the HR representative, who always looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. On the table sat a silver folder with my name typed neatly across the front. Blake leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head. "Kira," he said smoothly, "after 20 years of dedicated service, we've decided to restructure your position." I blinked. "Restructure?" "It's corporate talk," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Your role's being phased out. You'll need to clean out your desk by Monday." For a second, I couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were closing in, the hum of the fluorescent lights suddenly louder than my heartbeat. 20 years. 20 years of early mornings, missed birthdays, mentoring younger staff, staying late when Blake wanted to impress upper management. And just like that, I was disposable. But I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I smiled, calmly, sweetly, almost too politely, and said, "Completely understand." Blake smirked, thinking I'd accepted it. He had no idea. No one in that room did. Because Friday was going to be fun. And by the time Monday came, Northbridge Systems would never be the same again. "Where are you watching from? Seattle? Toronto? Maybe New York or Chicago? Wherever you are, grab a cup of coffee. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about dignity, kindness, and the quiet strength that people underestimate until it's too late." Let me take you back a few months before that fateful meeting. I'm 35, divorced, and living alone in a cozy apartment overlooking Lake Union. I never had kids. The job was always my baby. I poured everything into it. The late nights, the company holidays, the endless staff training. I believed in making people feel seen, even when management didn't. My team called me Mama Kira. I was the one who kept candy in her drawer, remembered birthdays, covered shifts when someone's child got sick, and brought soup when the flu hit the office. I believed in kindness. But kindness, I've learned, doesn't always save you. Blake joined the company 5 years ago, tall, confident, with a fake laugh that echoed too loud down the hallway. He loved power, especially over people like me, loyal, predictable, and maybe a little too trusting. At first, he acted like I was his right-hand woman. He'd ask me to help him prepare reports, guide new hires, and give feedback on team morale. I thought he respected me. But slowly, I started noticing small things. He'd take credit for my ideas during board meetings. When promotions came, he'd smile and say, "You're too valuable where you are, Kira." And when the company hired a new intern, Samantha, fresh out of college, bright and ambitious, Blake's behavior changed. He started showing off, acting younger, making jokes he never used to make. I watched him hand Samantha the projects that I'd once handled. Still, I told myself maybe this is just a new phase. Companies evolve. People move on. But then one afternoon, I overheard something that chilled me. Blake was in the break room with another manager, whispering. "She's too old school," he said. "Reliable but not innovative. Once the restructuring hits, she'll be the first to go." They laughed. I walked quietly past them, holding my coffee cup so tightly I could feel the heat through my skin. That night, I sat by my window, watching the Seattle skyline shimmer against the lake. My reflection in the glass looked tired but calm. I realized something important. I couldn't control what they planned. But I could control how I responded. And, oh, I was going to respond. The following weeks, I started noticing more signs. Documents missing from shared drives, my access permissions quietly changing, and whispers that upper management was reviewing department redundancies. Still, I smiled through every meeting, trained Samantha like a mentor, and kept records of everything. Emails, reports, ideas I'd contributed, but Blake had claimed. Copies of my annual reviews showing perfect performance. Even the community project I'd spearheaded that had brought Northbridge a $2.3 million government contract. All filed neatly in a secure drive. My drive. And when I discovered something much bigger, something that could crumble the shiny glass walls of Northbridge systems, I knew my time was running out. Friday was approaching fast. That morning, I brought donuts for everyone. It was a small office tradition. I'd been doing it for years. People smiled, laughed, thanked me. Even Blake took one, powdered sugar dusting his sleeve. "Kira," he said, smug as ever. "You've always been such a team player." I smiled. Always. He didn't know those donuts were my farewell gift, and the calm before the storm. When he called me into that meeting later that day, I was ready. As he spoke those words, "Clean out your desk by Monday," I kept my expression soft, my voice warm, my hands steady. "Completely understand," I said. Blake's smirk widened. "Good. HR will help with your severance paperwork. It's nothing personal." "Oh, I know," I replied gently. "Just business." He didn't see the small flash drive in my pocket, the one labeled Friday. I stood up, shook his hand, and walked out gracefully. Behind me, I could feel their relief, like they'd finally gotten rid of me. But by the end of the day, that relief would turn into panic. Because while they thought they'd buried me, I was already digging up something they'd never survive. The office clock ticked toward noon. Sunlight streamed through the glass windows, making the city look almost peaceful. I went back to my desk, smiled at Samantha, and started packing my things, framed photos, a plan I'd kept alive for a decade, and a coffee mug that read, "Do good anyway." Inside my drawer was a small envelope marked confidential. It wasn't mine. It was Blake's. And inside it were the first clues to what would make Friday very interesting. I'll stop there for now. Because what happens next, what's inside that envelope, and what I did with it changed everything. And trust me, it's the reason Friday was the best day of my 20-year career. I sat at my desk, pretending to pack as I stared at the small beige envelope marked confidential. B. Carter. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. The office around me buzzed as usual, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, someone laughing near the printer. But all I could hear was the echo of Blake's smug voice. "Clean out your desk by Monday." I brushed my thumb over the flap of the envelope, tempted to peek right there. But no. Patience had gotten me through 20 years here. It would get me through one more day. So, I slipped the envelope into my purse, zipped it closed, and looked up as Samantha, the young intern, approached my desk. She was 22, bright-eyed, always in pastel blazers, and the kind of girl who said, "Oh my gosh," at least 3 times a minute. She was also completely unaware that Blake, the same man who just fired me, had been using her like a pawn. "Hey, Kira," she said softly. "I just heard about, the restructuring." She looked like she might cry. "I'm so sorry." I smiled kindly. "It's okay, sweetie. Life has a funny way of rearranging things. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise." She frowned. "But you've been here forever. You trained half the people in this building. It's not fair." "Fairness," I said gently, "isn't always part of the business model." She nodded, confused but sad. I patted her hand. "Keep your head down. Learn everything you can. And remember, kindness isn't weakness, it's just often underpaid." Her eyes glistened. "You're the nicest person here." "Maybe," I said, chuckling. "But sometimes, even the nicest person can surprise you." By 2 p.m., the office started thinning out. People were preparing for the weekend. Laughter echoed from the break room. Someone played music low on their speaker. But I wasn't done. I had one last task, a quiet visit to archives. Northbridge's archive room was 2 floors down, cold, silent, and mostly forgotten. Rows of metal cabinets lined the walls, filled with old contracts, project blueprints, and internal memos. I had the access code memorized from years of managing audits. The lights flickered as I stepped inside. My heels echoed against the tiled floor. I went straight to the 2018 to 2021 contracts cabinet, drawer 4B. That's where I'd seen something odd a few weeks back, a series of contracts under a project name that never existed on any of our public reports, Project Halcyon. I pulled the drawer open. Inside were files stamped confidential, internal use only. I flipped through them quickly, scanning signatures. My stomach tightened when I saw Blake's name, and under it an approval line marked budget for $0.8 million. But there was no government seal, no client signature, nothing to show where the money went. Just digital transfer receipts leading to a shell company. A shell company registered under his fiancée's name. I froze. My fingers trembled slightly, but then a calm washed over me. This was it. The real reason he'd wanted me gone. Because if HR ever discovered that I, the operations manager, had stumbled across this mess, his entire career would crumble. And now, he'd just handed me a golden reason to look deeper. I copied every page with my phone camera, careful to keep quiet. The whirring of the old ceiling fan masked the shutter sound. When I finished, I slid everything back exactly as I found it and walked out as calmly as I'd walked in. That evening, I didn't go home right away. I stopped by Harbor Cafe, my favorite spot by the water. It was quiet there, filled with warm light and the smell of roasted coffee beans. I sat by the window, opened the envelope from my purse, and finally looked inside. At first, it seemed harmless, a few receipts, some emails printed out, and a draft contract. But when I read closer, my breath caught. The emails were between Blake and a vendor I'd never heard of, Elysium Data Services. The tone was casual, almost friendly. "Transfer complete," one email said. "Appreciate you keeping this between us," Blake replied. "You'll get your percentage once the project closes." My fingers tightened around the paper. A percentage? For a fake project? Funded through company accounts. He was embezzling money. I looked out the cafe window at the skyline reflecting over the lake. My mind raced. If I went straight to HR, they'd bury it. Blake had friends there. If I called the board, they might cover it up to protect the company's reputation. But there was one thing Blake hadn't counted on: my connections. 20 years in this company meant I knew everyone, from the janitors to the chief financial officer's assistant, Lydia. And Lydia owed me a favor. I texted her. "Hey Lydia, coffee tomorrow?
Need to talk."
Discreetly. She replied almost instantly. "Of course, Kira. Everything okay?" I smiled faintly. "It will be." When I got home, I sat in silence. My apartment was cozy, small bookshelf, candles on the counter, a painting my mom made before she passed. I looked at it for a long time, remembering her voice. "Kira, people will take advantage of your kindness, but never let them change it." I whispered back to the memory. "I won't, Mom. But sometimes kindness needs a plan." I backed up every file I'd photographed onto an encrypted drive. Then I printed one copy, sealed it in an envelope marked to be opened only if something happens to me. I slipped it into a small safety box under my bed. When I turned off the lights that night, I wasn't scared. I was steady.
Calm.
Friday was coming, and it was going to be fun. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing had happened. People looked at me with sympathy, some with awkward smiles. Samantha gave me a hug, and I hugged her back. "Are you really okay?" she whispered. "I'm great," I said truthfully. "It's a beautiful day to make things right." Blake walked past, his cologne clouding the air. "Morning, Kira," he said with a grin. "Morning, boss," I replied. He winked. "Big day ahead." "Oh," I said softly. "You have no idea." The clock ticked toward noon. Lydia texted me to meet her in the break room. I grabbed 2 coffees and went over, smiling like nothing was unusual. She was waiting by the vending machine, her curly hair tied up, her badge glinting under the lights. Kira, what's going on? She asked quietly. I handed her the coffee. You remember Project Halcyon? Her brow furrowed. Barely. It was never logged in the budget sheet. Exactly, I said. I need you to check one thing for me. The internal transfers from Q4. You'll see some names that don't belong. Lydia's eyes widened. Kira, what are you doing? Protecting what's left of this company, I said simply. And maybe teaching someone a lesson. She hesitated, then nodded. You didn't hear this from me. I never do. That afternoon, Blake called another meeting. The official farewell notice, he said, for transparency. Everyone gathered in the open workspace, about 30 of us. Blake stood at the front, oozing confidence. As many of you know, he began, our dear colleague Kira will be leaving us as part of restructuring. Let's all thank her for her years of... He didn't finish. Because at that moment, Lydia burst through the door, pale as paper, holding a folder in her hand. Her voice trembled. Blake, you need to come to HR.
Now.
The room fell silent. Blake frowned, confused. What's this about? She looked at me briefly, just for half a second, and then turned to him. Immediately, she said firmly. Everyone's eyes darted between them. I kept my expression calm, my arms folded. Blake looked flustered for the first time in his life. Can't it wait? No, Lydia said, her tone clipped. He glared at her, then at me, suspicion flickering in his eyes. I smiled sweetly. Everything okay, Blake? He didn't answer. He followed Lydia out of the room, muttering under his breath. The entire office buzzed with whispers. Samantha leaned toward me. What's happening? I shrugged lightly. Just another Friday. But inside, my heart was steady, slow, deliberate. Because whatever Lydia found had just set off the first domino. And by the time the last one fell, the whole building would feel it. The moment Lydia and Blake disappeared into HR, I turned toward my computer, opened my email, and clicked send on a scheduled message. It went to one address only, the board of directors. Subject line: for immediate review, misappropriation of company funds. Attached, every file, every receipt, every email. And a single line for me at the bottom. I may no longer be an employee, but I'll always protect what I built. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. The storm had just begun. But what happened next, within that very hour, changed everything. Because before I could even leave the building, security walked straight toward my desk. And the look in their eyes told me something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. The air in the office shifted. One moment, I was sipping lukewarm coffee, pretending to type an email. The next, two uniformed security officers were walking toward my desk, slow, heavy steps echoing through the carpeted floor. Every conversation in the open workspace stopped. Fingers froze over keyboards. The hum of the air conditioner seemed suddenly louder. Ms. Lawson, one of the guards said softly, could you please come with us? I blinked, feigning confusion. Is there a problem? HR needs to see you. A few people exchanged nervous glances. Samantha's hand went to her mouth. Wait, why? She didn't do anything, she blurted out, but I gave her a small shake of my head. It's okay, sweetheart, I said calmly. I'll be right back. I grabbed my purse and the small flash drive labeled Friday and followed the guards down the long glass hallway. My reflection passed in each panel, composed and steady. Inside, though, my thoughts were racing. Had Lydia moved too fast? Had Blake realized what I'd done? Or had someone higher up, intercepted my email before the board saw it? The walk to HR felt like miles. When the guards opened the door, I saw them. Blake, red-faced and pacing, and Martha, the HR rep from earlier, sitting stiffly behind her desk. Lydia was nowhere in sight. Blake turned as I entered. There she is, he snapped. Shut the door. I did, quietly. Blake, I said evenly. You seem upset. He slammed a folder on the table. Upset? You sent confidential company files to the board of directors. Do you have any idea what you've done? I raised an eyebrow. Protected the company from fraud? Martha flinched. Kira, please, she whispered. Let's keep things civil. I smiled faintly. I'm perfectly civil. Blake's jaw tightened. You've breached company policy. That's cause for immediate termination, with no severance. Interesting, I said. Considering the evidence I sent includes your signature on 3 illegal contracts. Maybe we should discuss what you consider company policy. He went pale for a moment, then forced a laugh. You have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, I do, I said softly, reaching into my purse and placing the flash drive on the table. This holds everything. Every transfer. Every email. Every lie. Martha stared at it, then looked at me. Kira, are you sure? Yes, I said, locking eyes with her. I've given the same files to the board. And to my attorney. Blake's composure cracked. You think anyone will believe you? You're just a mid-level operations manager. Maybe, I said. But mid-level managers are the ones who make companies run. And when we stop running, everything stops. The silence that followed was thick. Blake looked like he wanted to lunge across the table, but instead, he turned to Martha. I want her escorted out now. Martha hesitated. Blake.
Now.
The guard stepped forward, but I didn't move. I stood my ground, calm, collected. Be careful, Blake, I said softly. You're making this worse for yourself. He sneered. No, Kira. You just ended your career. I smiled, slow, steady, like I already knew something he didn't. Oh, I think my career's just getting interesting. Then I turned and walked out on my own. No struggle. No drama. Just the quiet confidence of a woman who knew the truth was already moving faster than anyone could stop it. When I reached the parking lot, the late afternoon sun hit my face. For the first time all day, I took a deep breath. My hands trembled slightly, adrenaline, not fear. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. The faint sound of city traffic drifted in through the window. My phone buzzed. A text from Lydia. He's in trouble. The board wants a full audit. Don't go far. I smiled faintly. Then another message came, this one from an unknown number. We need to talk. Tonight. 7 p.m. Harbor Cafe. I frowned. No name. Just that message. Was it Lydia again? Or someone from the board? Or was it a trap? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back one word. Okay. By 6:50, I was sitting at Harbor Cafe again, the same corner booth by the window. The sun had dipped low, painting the water in gold and pink streaks. I stirred my coffee slowly, pretending not to notice every time the door opened. At 7:03, a familiar figure walked in. Not Lydia. Not Blake. It was Mr. Jonathan Hale, the company's chief financial officer, quiet, sharp, and always 3 steps ahead of everyone. He spotted me and walked over, his gray suit crisp, his face unreadable. Kira, he said, sliding into the booth. Thank you for coming. I nodded. Didn't expect to hear from you, Mr. Hale. John, please, he said. We don't need titles tonight. He placed a brown folder on the table. I've seen what you sent. The board's already called an emergency meeting for Monday. So, you believe me? He looked at me for a long moment. I've suspected something for months. But without proof, my hands were tied. You've given us more than proof. You've given us leverage. My stomach tightened. Leverage? He nodded. Blake's not the only one involved. He was just the face. The real issue is higher, much higher. I leaned in. How high? He lowered his voice. Sea level high. I stared at him, my pulse quickening. You mean the executives? He nodded slowly. 2 of them. They've been moving money through fake projects for years. Blake was their link. I sat back, stunned. So that's why I was targeted. John's eyes softened. You were too good at your job. You caught inconsistencies others ignored. For a moment, I felt both vindicated and terrified. So what happens now?
He slid the folder toward me.
This contains their internal approvals. We'll need you to testify to authenticate your files.
It won't be easy.
They'll come after you. I opened the folder. Inside were documents I'd never seen, project summaries, forged budgets, even photos of executives meeting privately with offshore vendors. My hand shook slightly. John, this could take the company down. He nodded. Or save it. I exhaled slowly, closing the folder. Then I'll do it. John gave a faint smile. You're braver than most. I sipped my coffee.
No, John.
Just tired of being quiet. He stood to leave, but paused. One more thing. Don't go home tonight. My head jerked up. What? He glanced toward the window. If Blake's desperate, and he might do something stupid. Stay somewhere safe. I'll contact you tomorrow. And just like that, he was gone. The cafe felt suddenly colder. I sat there for a while, watching the reflection of city lights dance across the water. Don't go home tonight. Those words echoed in my head as I walked to my car. I drove slowly, scanning every mirror. The sky was dark now, the streets slick with rain. When I reached the highway turn, I hesitated. Left went home, right led to my sister's place in Bellevue. Then, in my rearview mirror, headlights appeared, bright, too close, following every turn I made. My pulse raced. I turned left onto a side street. The car followed. Another turn. It stayed behind. My hands gripped the wheel. Okay, Kira, I whispered to myself. Stay calm. I pulled into a gas station, pretending to check my tires. The other car slowed, then parked 2 rows behind me. I could barely make out the driver, just a shadowed figure. Then my phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. My stomach dropped. I looked up, and the car's engine revved. Then the headlights flared bright white, and the car started rolling slowly toward me. The car's headlights bore into me like twin suns. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. The rumble of the engine vibrated through the damp air, the smell of gasoline thick around me. Every instinct screamed run. But I didn't panic. 20 years in corporate chaos had trained me to think clearly under pressure. I took a slow breath, turned my face toward the gas pump like I hadn't noticed anything strange, and reached casually for my phone. The car inched closer. Its tires hissed against the wet pavement. All right, Kira, I muttered under my breath. Let's play this smart. I pressed my phone to my ear and spoke loud enough for the driver to hear. Yeah, officer. I'm still at the Shell station on Mercer Street. The one with the cameras out front. You're sending a patrol car, right? There was no one on the line. But whoever was watching didn't know that. The car's engine stalled for a second. Hesitation. Then, just as slowly, it reversed, turned, and pulled out of the lot. I didn't move until the taillights disappeared into the rain. When I finally exhaled, my knees nearly gave out. I climbed into my car, locked the doors, and sat there shaking for a full minute. My hands were ice cold. Then I started the engine and pulled out, heading not home, not to my sister's, but to the only place Blake, or anyone from the company, would never think to look. The Red Fern Inn, a small, old-fashioned motel on the edge of town. The kind of place truckers used to crash for a night and no one asked questions. I parked around back, paid cash for a room, and pulled the curtains tight. Only then did I finally let myself breathe. The room was dim, lit only by a flickering bedside lamp. The bedspread smelled faintly of detergent and dust. I sat on the edge, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror. My usually calm brown eyes looked tired, older, but sharp. I replayed the evening in my head, John's warning, the headlights, the text. You should have stayed quiet. Whoever sent that message had access to my number. That meant it wasn't random. It was someone from inside Northbridge. Maybe even Blake himself. My phone buzzed again, and I nearly dropped it. But this time it was Lydia. Lydia, are you safe? Me? Yes. Where are you? Lydia. At HQ. HR locked Blake's account. He's furious. He stormed out an hour ago. Me, he followed me. Lydia. Oh my God. Do you want me to call the police? Me. Not yet. If we call them too soon, he'll know we have something big. Let him sweat. There was a pause before her next message came. Lydia. Kira, be careful. I think this goes deeper than we thought. I stared at the screen. John had said the same thing, sea level high. I typed slowly. Me. I'm not giving up. He tried to silence me tonight. That was his mistake. Then I powered off my phone, placed it face down, and stared out at the rain. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a truck's horn on the highway. My head pounded. I'd barely slept. I went to the small desk in the corner and opened my laptop. The Wi-Fi here was weak, but good enough. First, I checked my backup drive. All the evidence was still safe: emails, receipts, contracts. Then I opened a blank document and started typing everything that had happened. A timeline. A record. If anything happened to me, someone needed to know the full story. Halfway through, I paused. The motel TV was playing a morning news broadcast, and there, in the ticker at the bottom of the screen, my company's name appeared. Breaking: Northbridge Systems launches internal financial investigation. I turned up the volume. The reporter was saying that multiple executives were being questioned following allegations of improper fund transfers. No names yet, but the storm had officially broken. A small smile crept across my face. Friday was getting interesting. At noon, I left the motel and drove to a small diner nearby. I needed real food and a stronger signal. The waitress, an older woman with a name tag that said June, smiled kindly. "Rough morning, sweetheart?" she asked. "You could say that," I replied. She poured me coffee. "Well, whatever it is, just remember, storms don't last forever." I smiled faintly. "Thank you." Her words sat with me. Storms don't last forever. Maybe not, but sometimes they clear the sky for something better. As I ate, I checked my email. One new message from John. From Jonathan Hale. Subject: Urgent, they know. Body: Kira, something's happening. Someone leaked to the press about your email to the board. They're spinning it as data theft. HR is claiming you acted maliciously. You need to stay hidden until I sort this out. Do not come in. They've involved corporate lawyers. I'm working on your behalf, but they're scared. Blake's missing.
John.
My fork froze midair.
Missing?
That meant he wasn't just angry anymore. He was dangerous. I finished my meal quickly, paid cash, and left. My instincts told me to move again, never stay in one place too long. I drove toward the outskirts of Seattle, near Lake Sammamish, where there was another motel. But halfway there, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello." Silence. Then a man's voice, calm, deep, unfamiliar. "Kara Lawson?"
Yes.
"Who's this?" "I'm with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. My name is Agent Douglas Rains. We need to speak with you about Northbridge Systems." My heart stopped. "How did you get this number?" "Your friend Jonathan Hale gave it to us," he said. "We received copies of the evidence you sent. I can confirm this investigation is now federal. But, Ms. Lawson..." He paused. His tone shifted. "There's something you should know. Mr. Hale was attacked outside his office this morning." I froze. "What?" "He's in critical condition. We believe it's connected to the same people you exposed." The diner coffee in my stomach turned to ice. "Where are you, Ms. Lawson?" he asked gently. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed, don't trust anyone. But if John had been attacked, that meant these people would come for me next. "I'm safe," I said. "For now."
Good.
"Stay that way," Agent Rains replied. "We'll arrange protection. But until then, don't contact anyone from Northbridge. We'll reach out again soon." He hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time, my heart hammering. John was hurt. Blake was missing. And now the FBI was involved. The weight of everything hit me at once. I leaned forward, hands trembling, whispering, "What have I started?" Then I looked up and froze. Through the diner window, parked across the street, was a black SUV. The same one from last night. And this time, I could see the driver. It wasn't Blake. It was someone from corporate headquarters, someone I never thought I'd see again. Evelyn Marsh, the chief operations officer. Her cold blue eyes met mine through the rain-streaked glass. She smiled. Then, she lifted her phone and pressed it to her ear. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't about Blake anymore. It went all the way to the top. For a full 5 seconds, I couldn't move. Evelyn Marsh's face, perfectly poised, lips curved into that familiar, practiced corporate smile, was burned into my vision. That same woman had once congratulated me for my 10 years at Northbridge. She told me, "You're the backbone of this company, Kira. We need people like you." And now she was sitting in a black SUV across the street, watching me like I was prey. She held my gaze, then spoke into her phone again. A moment later, my own phone buzzed. "Unknown number. We need to talk. Come outside."
Now.
I swallowed hard. My pulse was hammering in my ears. Evelyn wanted me to come to her. No chance. I quietly reached for my bag, slid my laptop in, and made for the back exit of the diner. The waitress, June, glanced up. "Leaving already?" she asked kindly. "Yeah, got a call," I whispered, forcing a smile. "Thanks for the coffee." "Take care, sweetheart," she said, not noticing how my hand shook as I reached for the door. Outside, the drizzle had turned into rain again. I darted behind the diner, heading for the narrow alley where my car was parked. My heart pounded as I glanced back. Evelyn's SUV door opened. A tall man stepped out first. Black suit.
Earpiece.
Corporate security, not law enforcement. Then Evelyn followed, holding a small black umbrella like she had all the time in the world. I slipped into my car, locked the doors, and started the engine. The tires squealed as I pulled out. In my rearview mirror, the SUV headlights flared, then followed. For 20 minutes, I drove through the winding back roads near the lake, my mind racing. Why would Evelyn herself be here? Why not send someone else? Unless this wasn't just a cleanup mission. Unless she was scared. I turned sharply into a forested area, heading toward a hiking trail parking lot I knew. It was deserted this time of year. I killed the engine, grabbed my phone, and called the only number I trusted now, Agent Rains. He answered on the first ring. "Ms. Lawson? They found me. Evelyn Marsh. She's following me." His tone changed instantly. "Where are you?" "Near Lake Sammamish. The old trail entrance." "Stay in your vehicle. Lock the doors. We have units in your area." Before he could finish, bright headlights flooded the interior of my car. I twisted in my seat. The SUV had found me. Too late. Evelyn stepped out again, calm and collected, holding her umbrella like she was arriving at a charity gala instead of a confrontation in the rain. I stayed on the line. "She's here." "Do not engage," Rains said sharply. "Help is on the way. Stall her if you can." Easier said than done. Evelyn approached slowly, heels crunching on wet gravel. Then she stopped right outside my window and tapped the glass twice with a manicured finger.
Tap. Tap.
I cracked the window, just an inch. "Kira," she said smoothly, her voice perfectly steady. "You've caused quite a storm." I said nothing. She tilted her head, studying me like a scientist examining a specimen. "You should have stayed quiet." Blake was messy, emotional.
But me?
I'm efficient. The word efficient sent a chill through me. "What do you want?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Control of the narrative. And the evidence you stole from our servers." I didn't steal anything. I exposed crimes. Her blue eyes flashed, but her smile never faltered. "And you think the FBI will protect you? Kira, by the time they finish sorting through your little files, your career, your reputation, your name will be unrecognizable." Rain pattered on the roof. My knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. "Walk away from this," she continued softly. "Delete everything. Sign an NDA. I'll even make sure you get a quiet severance package. Enough to start over somewhere sunny." I almost laughed. "Miami, maybe?" Her eyes narrowed, realizing I knew about Blake. "Blake was an amateur," I said coldly. "You're not." Her expression hardened. "Last chance, Kira." I met her gaze, steady now. "You can threaten me all you want, but the evidence is already out. 3 journalists and the Bureau have copies. If anything happens to me, everything goes public." For the first time, Evelyn's composure cracked, just slightly. Then, slowly, She lowered her umbrella and leaned in close enough that her perfume seeped through the half-open window. "Then I suggest," she whispered, "you pray those journalists are faster than my lawyers." And with that, she turned and walked back to the SUV. Moments later, the headlights vanished into the trees. I exhaled shakily, still gripping the wheel. The phone in my lap buzzed. "Ms. Lawson," Agent Rain said, "we have your coordinates. Stay put. Our team is minutes away." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. The rain intensified, drumming against the windshield. I whispered to myself, this isn't just corruption. It's cover-up. And as I stared into the dark forest beyond my headlights, I realized something else. Evelyn hadn't come to threaten me. She'd come to distract me, which meant something, somewhere, was happening right now. I opened my laptop again, heart pounding, and refreshed my encrypted email. A new message blinked on screen. From unknown sender. Subject: John tried to protect you. Don't trust Rains. Attachment: proof, zip. My breath caught. Was it bait? Or the truth? I hesitated, the cursor hovering over the file. Then, from outside, I heard it. A faint crunch of footsteps in the rain. Slow. Careful. Getting closer. I turned off the laptop screen and held my breath. The sound stopped right beside my door. Then a man's voice whispered through the rain, low, urgent, familiar. "Kira, it's me. Open up." I froze. That voice, hoarse, weak, but unmistakable. It was John. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. The rain muffled everything, thunder rumbling in the distance, wind rushing through the trees, but that voice cut through it all. "Kira, it's me," the voice said again, closer this time. "Please, open up." I blinked, heart slamming against my ribs.
John. He was supposed to be dead.
The coroner's report, the news bulletin, even the closed casket funeral. I'd seen the ashes delivered to his mother. "John." My voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "It's me," he said again. "I don't have much time." My shaking hand reached toward the lock, then froze.
No.
Evelyn could have sent anyone. Maybe she'd found one of those voice-mimic AI programs. Maybe this was another trap. Say something only John would know, I demanded, eyes darting to the shadows beyond the glass.
A pause.
Then, softly, "The day we met, you spilled coffee on your white blouse and spent the entire meeting clutching a file in front of your chest. You said, 'If I ever get promoted, I'm buying stock in stain remover.'" My breath hitched. That memory, our first week at Northbridge, 20 years ago. No one else could have known that. "John," I breathed. "Let me in, Kira. Please." Slowly, I unlocked the door. The hinges creaked as I pushed it open. And there he was. John Reynolds, older, thinner, and with a jagged scar slicing across his right cheek. His hair was a little longer, streaked with gray, and his once crisp suit was replaced by a damp hoodie and jeans. His eyes, those same blue eyes, darted nervously around before locking on mine. "Close the door," he whispered. "They're tracking movement near the lake." I obeyed, slamming it shut and locking it again. Then we just stared at each other for a long, breathless moment. "You're alive," I whispered. He gave a half-smile. "Not according to Northbridge." Tears welled in my eyes. They said your car exploded." "It did," he said grimly, pulling back his sleeve to reveal burned scars along his wrist. "But not before I jumped. Why didn't you come forward? Why fake your death?" John glanced toward the woods, his jaw tight. "Because I was the leak. The whistleblower before you ever were. I sent the first batch of documents to the feds. The explosion wasn't an accident. Evelyn found out." My stomach dropped. "You've been hiding all this time?" He nodded. "Until now. When I saw your name on the news, I knew they'd go after you next. I couldn't let that happen." Rain hammered on the roof. Thunder cracked above us. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flash drive. "Everything's on here. Proof that Evelyn and 2 board members laundered millions through fake R&D budgets. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Even ties to politicians." I stared at the drive,
heart pounding.
And why give it to me? I asked quietly. Because I can't trust the Bureau anymore, John said, his eyes flicking toward my phone. Your FBI contact, Rains, he's compromised. I froze. That's impossible. He's been helping me. John shook his head. Helping you stay visible. So they could track your movements. You think it's a coincidence Evelyn found you in a random diner? I stared at him, realization dawning like a cold sunrise. The message I got earlier. John tried to protect you. Don't trust Rains. It was real. John, I whispered, voice shaking. If what you're saying is true, then we're both in danger. We've been in danger, he said softly. But now we have something they don't, time. They think I'm dead. That gives us a head start. Where do we go? There's a safe house outside Olympia, he said, glancing at his watch. We can get there by dawn if we leave now. He reached for the car keys, but before I could start the engine, my phone lit up again. Rains calling. John's expression hardened. Don't answer. I hesitated. If I don't pick up, he'll know something's wrong. Then let's give him a reason to stop looking, John said, a dangerous edge in his voice. He grabbed my phone, switched to speaker, and nodded for me to keep quiet. I answered. Agent Rains? Ms. Lawson, Rains' voice came through urgent. Our team's almost there. Are you safe? I forced my voice to sound steady. Yes, I'm fine. But Evelyn's gone. She said it was over. John gave me a look. Keep going. She offered me a deal. I continued. Told me to drop everything. Maybe I should. Rains hesitated. What kind of deal? To disappear, I said slowly. She said she'd make it worth my while. Static crackled on the line. Then Rains spoke again, his tone colder now. Did she give you anything? John mouthed say no. No, I lied. Just words. A long pause. Then Rains said, Good. Don't go anywhere, Ms. Lawson. We'll handle everything from here. The line clicked dead. John's eyes darkened. He's sending a team, but not to protect you. I swallowed hard. Then we need to move. We drove through the night, past empty highways, shadowed forests, and gas stations that looked frozen in time. Every car behind us felt like a threat. Every light in the distance felt like a trap. John barely spoke, eyes fixed on the road ahead. I wanted to ask him everything, how he survived, where he'd been, but every time I looked at him, the exhaustion in his face said enough. At one point he said quietly, You were right to laugh that day. In the office. When they fired you. I frowned. What do you mean? Because that laugh told me you weren't broken yet, he said. And people who aren't broken, they're dangerous to men like Blake and Evelyn. I looked out the window, at the rain-slicked trees. I didn't feel dangerous. I just felt tired. He smiled faintly. Tired people change the world when they've had enough. Hours later, as dawn began to break, we reached the outskirts of Olympia. The safe house was an old ranger cabin by the water, surrounded by pine trees and fog. John parked the car and scanned the area. It's clear. Inside, the cabin smelled of dust and cedar. A single oil lamp flickered on the table. He handed me the flash drive. Hide this somewhere safe. I'm going to make sure we weren't followed. I tucked the drive inside a hollow beneath the floorboard. Be careful. He nodded and stepped outside. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. I turned toward the window, then froze. Through the mist, I saw them. 2 dark SUVs, parked just down the slope. Men in suits stepping out, radios pressed to their ears. I ran to the door. John. He looked up from behind a tree, just as one of the men shouted. There. Move in. Gunfire erupted. John ducked behind cover, shouting, Kira, run. I froze at the doorway, torn between fear and disbelief. Bullets struck the side of the cabin, splintering the wood. I dropped to the floor, crawling toward the back exit. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I could hear Rain's voice outside now, calm and commanding. Bring her in alive, he ordered. He's expendable.
Alive. They wanted me alive.
John burst through the door, grabbing my arm. Go, go, go. We sprinted into the woods as shouts echoed behind us. Branches whipped at my face, mud splashed beneath our feet, and somewhere behind us, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. We ran until my lungs burned, until the sound of pursuit faded into the rain. Finally, John stopped near a stream, panting. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "Not until one of us is gone." I looked at him, trembling, soaked, terrified, and realized something even more terrifying. He wasn't just talking about Evelyn or Rains. He was talking about himself. The forest was eerily silent except for the slow drip of rain off the pine needles. My breath came in ragged gasps as I crouched behind a fallen log, my whole body trembling from the adrenaline. John leaned against a tree trunk, gripping his side. His hand was slick with blood. "John, you're hit," I whispered, rushing to him. "It's nothing," he muttered through clenched teeth, but I could see the dark stains spreading fast. "Nothing? You're bleeding out." He shook his head, eyes darting toward the woods behind us. "We can't stop here, Kira. They'll sweep this whole area. We need to move east. There's a service tunnel that runs under the ridge." I wanted to argue, but the urgency in his voice snapped me back into focus. I tore a strip from my sleeve and pressed it against the wound. "This should slow the bleeding." He winced but didn't complain. "You always were the practical one. Despite everything, the gunfire, the betrayal, the blood, I almost laughed. And you always were the idiot who tried to play hero." John gave a small, pained grin. "Some things never change." We started moving again, weaving through the dense trees. The mud sucked at our shoes, and every step felt like walking through a nightmare. But as the minutes passed, I realized the sounds of pursuit were fading. For now, we were safe. "John," I said softly as we walked, "you said they won't stop until one of us is gone."
What did you mean by that?
He slowed, breathing hard. "When I went underground, I found out something else about the files. There's another list, one that was never supposed to exist." I frowned. "What list?" "The whistleblower registry," he said. "Names of every employee who ever raised an internal complaint. Every single one. Northbridge tracked them all. Dozens of people have vanished over the years. Accidents, disappearances, early retirements. It's a system, Kira. We were just next in line." My stomach turned. "So that's why they were so calm when they fired me. They'd already planned it." He nodded grimly. "They always plan it." The realization hit like a punch. All those kind smiles in the office, all those fake thank you speeches, everything had been scripted. I wasn't being restructured. I was being erased. We finally reached the ridge. John pointed toward a rusted hatch half buried under moss and leaves. "There. The tunnel." He crouched down, struggling to lift the metal cover. I helped him, and with a groan of old hinges, it opened to reveal a narrow ladder descending into darkness. "You first," he said. I hesitated. "Are you sure it's safe?" "Safe is a luxury we can't afford." The air below smelled like rust and damp earth. I climbed down, my hands trembling against the cold rungs. John followed, sealing the hatch behind us. The tunnel was low and cramped, lit only by the dim glow of my phone flashlight. We walked in silence, the sound of dripping water echoing around us. Then John stopped. "What is it?" I whispered. He motioned for me to stay quiet and crouched down, inspecting something on the floor. When he stood again, his face was grim. "Boot prints. Fresh ones." My chest tightened. "Someone's been down here." John nodded. "Recently. Maybe within the hour." Could it be one of Rain's men? Or worse? The tunnel split ahead, 2 directions. Left or right? John turned to me. "You choose." I glanced at the 2 paths. The left tunnel was narrower but looked cleaner, like it had been reinforced recently. The right one was rough and half-collapsed, but it sloped upward, maybe toward an exit. "Right," I said finally. "We need to get out, not deeper." John nodded and led the way. His steps were slower now, and I could tell he was fading. "You're losing too much blood," I whispered. He didn't answer. After another 10 minutes, the tunnel began to widen. I could see faint daylight ahead. Relief surged through me until I heard the sound. Voices. Male voices. Close. I froze. John pressed a finger to his lips and motioned for me to follow him into a side alcove. We crouched behind a pile of old pipes as 2 flashlights swept across the tunnel entrance. "Raines wants confirmation," one of the men said, his voice echoing. "He says she's with someone." "Yeah," the other replied. "The dead guy. Orders are to bring her in alive, but if Reynolds resists, then it's another accident." I bit my lip hard, holding my breath. John's hand brushed mine in the darkness, steadying me. The men's voices grew fainter as they moved past, their footsteps splashing through shallow puddles. We waited another full minute before moving again, this time in the opposite direction. When we finally reached the end of the tunnel, it opened onto an abandoned maintenance station. A broken window let in the gray morning light. John sank onto an old bench, breathing heavily. "We can rest here a minute." I knelt beside him, pressing my jacket against his wound. "You're burning up." "I'll be fine," he muttered, though his voice was weakening. "Just need to get this drive to someone who can finish what we started." "I'll get you to a doctor first." "No," he shook his head. "You have to go on without me if it comes to that." "John, stop," I said, tears pricking my eyes. "You didn't fake your death just to die again in a tunnel." He gave a faint smile. "Guess I'm bad at staying gone." I almost smiled back, but before I could, the sound of tires screeched outside. We both froze. John's head snapped up. "They found us." I looked toward the broken window, dark shapes moving through the fog. "Go," he said, forcing himself to stand. "Out the back. There's a service road down the slope. Take the flash drive." "I'm not leaving you." "Kira, please," he said sharply. "If they catch both of us, it's over. Someone has to get that evidence out." Before I could argue, the door exploded inward, men in tactical gear storming through, guns raised. John shoved me toward the back exit, yelling, "Run." I bolted through the narrow hallway, clutching the flash drive in my hand. Behind me, I heard the chaos, shouting, gunfire, John's voice barking orders, then a deafening crash. I stumbled out into the foggy daylight, my heart in my throat. The forest stretched out before me, endless and gray. I didn't look back. I just ran. Branches tore at my clothes, my lungs burned, and the world blurred around me. I didn't stop until I reached the road. There, a small cabin at the edge of the woods. Smoke rising from its chimney. I ran to the door and banged on it. "Please help." The door opened slowly. An elderly woman stood there, wrapped in a shawl, her eyes kind but cautious. "My goodness, what happened to you?" "Please," I gasped. "I need to use your phone. It's an emergency." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded and stepped aside. "Of course, dear. Come in." I stumbled inside, shivering. The warmth of the cabin hit me like a wave, fire crackling in the hearth, the faint smell of cinnamon. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice shaking. She handed me a towel. "You're safe now, sweetheart. Sit down, catch your breath." I smiled weakly, clutching the towel. "Thank you. You have no idea what that means." As she turned to pour me some tea, I looked down at the phone on the table. I reached for it, then froze. Because carved faintly into the wooden handle of her kettle, just visible in the firelight, were the letters. NBC. Northbridge Corporation. My pulse spiked. The woman turned back toward me, her smile widening. "You look exhausted, dear," she said softly. "We'll take good care of you." And, in that moment I realized, I hadn't escaped at all. My heart nearly stopped. The letters NBC gleamed faintly in the orange light of the fire. Northbridge Corporation, the same company that had destroyed my career, hunted John, and tried to bury the truth. The woman's smile didn't waver. If anything, it grew warmer, softer. Too soft. "Sit down, dear," she said again. "You're shaking." My instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. I forced a nervous laugh, trying to buy time. "I'm sorry, I had an accident near the trail." My car broke down. I didn't mean to scare you. She poured tea into a floral cup. No trouble at all. We don't get many visitors up here. She placed the cup in front of me, her movements slow and deliberate. The steam curled into the air. Cinnamon, chamomile, and something else. A faint chemical scent beneath it. I glanced at the cup, then at her. That's kind of you. Drink, she said kindly. It'll calm your nerves. I smiled faintly, wrapping my fingers around the cup, but didn't drink. Her eyes followed my every move. Do you live here alone? I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. Oh no, she said, her tone brightening. My son helps me. He's out getting firewood. I nodded slowly. That's nice. But then, from outside, came the crunch of boots on gravel. Too heavy, too uniform for a man carrying firewood. The woman's expression flickered, just for a second. Then she turned toward the window. That must be him now. The door opened, and there he was. Agent Rains. Rains still clung to his coat, his eyes cold as they swept over the room, landing on me. Ms. Lawson, he said calmly, you gave us quite a chase. I pushed back from the table. You're working for them. He smiled faintly. It's not as black and white as you think. John's words echoed in my head. Don't trust Rains. Where's John? I demanded. Rains stepped further inside, closing the door behind him. Let's just say his luck finally ran out. No, I whispered. You're lying. He shrugged. Believe what you want. But this, he gestured toward the flash drive in my pocket, ends today. The woman stood quietly by the fireplace, her kind smile now replaced with something else, detached, clinical, like someone watching an experiment. I rose to my feet. You're not getting it. Rains took a slow step forward. You've been through a lot, Kira. Why make it worse? Hand over the drive, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. Taken care of, I repeated bitterly. That's what you said about John. His eyes narrowed. Last chance. I took a breath, my mind racing. There was no way out through the front door, he was blocking it. The window was too small. The fireplace. My eyes flicked to the old oil lamp burning beside the kettle. Rains followed my gaze. Don't even think about it. Too late. I grabbed the lamp and hurled it at the floor. Flames roared to life, spreading fast across the old rug. The woman screamed, stumbling back. Rains cursed, lunging toward me. But I was already moving. I bolted through the kitchen, shoving open a narrow back door, and diving into the rain. The cold air hit me like a slap. I sprinted down the slope, branches whipping my face, mud sucking at my boots. Behind me, I heard shouting, then an explosion as the flames met the old gas stove. The cabin burst into a bloom of fire, lighting the forest in orange. I didn't look back. I just ran. For what felt like an eternity, I ran through the woods until my lungs burned and my legs threatened to give out. When I finally stopped, I collapsed beside a stream, gulping for breath. My fingers trembled as I pulled the flash drive from my pocket. It was warm, but intact. John's voice echoed in my mind. Get it to someone who can finish what we started. I needed to get it to the press. But who? Everyone we'd trusted before had been compromised. Then I remembered Lydia Cho, an investigative journalist I'd once met at a corporate ethics seminar years ago. She'd written exposés on companies just like Northbridge. Ruthless, fearless, impossible to bribe. I fished my phone from my pocket. Miraculously, it still had power. I turned it on, praying I still had service. 1 bar.
Just one.
I typed quickly. Lydia, it's Kira Lawson. Northbridge is dirtier than we thought. I have proof. Need to meet. Urgent. I hit send. No signal. Message pending. Come on, I whispered, waving the phone toward the open sky. Finally, it sent. I slumped against a tree, exhausted. The forest was silent again. Then, from somewhere far behind, came a faint rumble. Engines. More SUVs. They were still hunting me. I pushed myself up, forcing my legs to move. I followed the stream, hoping it would lead to a road, a town, anything. After an hour, I spotted a flicker of light through the trees, a diner sign glowing faintly in the mist. My heart leapt. Civilization. As I got closer, I realized it was an all-night truck stop. Only a few vehicles in the lot.
Perfect.
I ducked inside, dripping wet and covered in mud. The waitress looked up, startled. Rough night, hon. You could say that. I managed. Can I borrow your phone charger? Sure thing. She handed me one. Sit anywhere you like. I slid into a booth near the back and plugged in my phone. The news was playing quietly on the TV above the counter. Then my stomach dropped. On the screen was a breaking news banner. Explosion near Lake Sammamish. No survivors confirmed. They were showing the burning remains of the cabin. And under the headline, my name. Former Northbridge employee Kira Lawson suspected in fatal explosion. I stared in shock. My photo flashed on screen, smiling, from my old company ID badge. The waitress turned toward me, then back at the TV, squinting. Hey, you look kinda like. I forced a weak laugh. Yeah, I get that a lot. My pulse thundered. I grabbed my phone and slid lower in the booth. I had to get out before someone recognized me. Then the phone buzzed. Lydia Cho. Got your message. I believe you. Meet me in Seattle. Tomorrow. 8 a.m. Pier 47. Don't be followed. I exhaled shakily, relief flooding through me. There was still hope. But before I could breathe fully, the doorbell jingled. A man in a black coat stepped in, shaking off the rain. He scanned the room slowly. Then his eyes landed on me. His face was calm.
Too calm.
And in his hand, just barely visible beneath his sleeve, was a small earpiece. I froze. He smiled faintly. Evening, Ms. Lawson. The waitress looked up in confusion. Do you two know each other? He reached into his coat pocket. I didn't wait to find out what for. I kicked over my coffee cup, grabbed my phone, and ran straight out the back door into the night. The rain came down harder as I tore across the back lot, my shoes splashing through puddles. Behind me, the door slammed open and a man's voice shouted, "Stop."
Kira, stop.
I didn't look back. I darted behind a row of trucks, crouching low, my breath coming out in ragged gasps. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my ears. The man's footsteps grew closer. He was calm, too calm for someone chasing a fugitive. That meant he wasn't worried. He thought he already had me cornered. I pressed myself against the cold metal of a trailer, the smell of diesel thick in the air. My fingers brushed against the flash drive in my pocket. I couldn't let it fall into their hands, not after everything John and I had sacrificed. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, the click of a lighter. A flame flickered briefly between two trucks. His shadow stretched across the wet gravel. Come on, Kira, he called softly, his voice oddly gentle. This doesn't have to end badly. You're not a killer. We can help you. I almost laughed. Help me? After 20 years of loyalty, they'd thrown me out like trash, and now, after framing me for murder, they wanted me to surrender quietly? Go to hell, I muttered under my breath. The man sighed. I was hoping you'd say that. He moved toward my hiding spot. I spotted an old fire extinguisher lying by one of the trucks.
Perfect.
As his shadow loomed closer, I grabbed it and swung hard. The metal cylinder crashed into his knee, and he cried out, stumbling. I didn't wait. I bolted out from behind the truck and ran for the highway. A horn blared, a semi swerving to avoid me as I sprinted across the road, soaked and terrified. On the other side, I dove into the tree line, mud splattering up my jeans. I didn't stop until I reached an old drainage tunnel beneath the overpass. I crouched inside, shivering, my heart still hammering. I needed to make it to Seattle by morning. Lydia was my only chance.
But how?
My car was back at the cabin, probably in pieces by now. My face was on the news. Every cop, every security camera, every bus driver could recognize me. I had one option left: disappear. I scrolled through my phone contacts until I found the name I hadn't seen in years, Dean Harper. He'd been an IT tech back at Northbridge. We weren't close, but he'd always been kind, and he'd quit after refusing to cover up a data breach. If anyone could help me vanish for a few hours, it was him. I dialed his number. It rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Kira? It's 2 a.m. Do you have any idea? Dean, listen to me. I don't have time to explain. I'm being hunted by Northbridge. They burned a cabin and blamed me for it. Silence. Then, you're serious. Dead serious. I need your help. Please. Another pause. Then he exhaled. Where are you? Somewhere off Route 2 near Monroe. I need a ride. Fast.
Stay put, he said.
I'm coming. I hung up and tucked myself deeper into the tunnel. The rain beat down above me. My hands shook from adrenaline and cold. Every sound made me flinch. The rustle of leaves, the hum of distant engines. But finally, headlights appeared near the road. Dean's old black pickup slowed to a stop. I darted out, waving him down. Kira, get in. I jumped into the passenger seat. He looked at me, mud-smeared, trembling, soaked, and let out a low whistle. You look like you wrestled a hurricane. Feels about right, I said with a weak smile. He didn't ask questions as he pulled back onto the road. He just drove, eyes sharp on the mirror. When we were a few miles away, he finally said, You really crossed Northbridge? Yeah, I whispered. And I have proof. Enough to sink them. He gave a low whistle. Then you're not safe anywhere. I know, I said. That's why I need to reach a journalist in Seattle by morning. He nodded. Then that's where we're going. We drove in silence for a while, the only sound the steady rhythm of the wipers. My thoughts drifted back, 20 years at that company, believing I was doing good, believing they cared about people. They'd preached teamwork, ethics, kindness. But the truth? They'd built their empire on silence, on people like me turning a blind eye. John had seen through it first. He tried to warn me years ago, but I'd been too loyal, too scared of losing everything. And now he was gone because of it. Dean, I said quietly, did you ever regret leaving? He glanced at me. Every day. But then I remember who I'd be if I'd stayed. Some things cost more than a paycheck. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. You're right. As dawn crept closer, the lights of Seattle appeared on the horizon, gray and glistening in the rain. My heart lifted. We were almost there. Dean parked the truck a few blocks from Pier 47. I'll wait here, he said, just in case something goes wrong. I squeezed his hand. Thank you, Dean, for everything. He nodded. Be careful. I stepped out, pulling my hood low, blending into the morning fog. The pier was quiet except for a few fishermen setting up their gear. At the far end, under an old street lamp, stood a woman in a dark coat. Lydia Cho. Her sharp eyes found me instantly. You made it, she said. Barely. Do you have it? I handed her the flash drive. Everything's on there. Financial documents, internal memos, even their off-the-books contracts. She slipped it into her pocket. Once I verify this, it'll go public. But we have to be smart. They'll expect you to come to me. I frowned. What do you mean? They're probably watching every journalist in the city. If they trace this back to me, it's over for both of us. So what do we do? She glanced around, then lowered her voice. You disappear again. I'll take it from here. I hesitated. Lydia, I can't just hide while they... A loud crack split the air. The sound of a gunshot. Lydia's eyes widened. She staggered, clutching her shoulder, and collapsed. I screamed, diving for cover behind a stack of crates. People shouted and scattered along the pier. From across the water, a man in a raincoat lowered a rifle. Rains. My breath hitched. He was still alive, and he'd found me. I crawled toward Lydia, who was bleeding but conscious. Stay with me, I whispered. She gritted her teeth. Run, get the story out. I grabbed the flash drive from her pocket and stuffed it back into mine. More gunfire. Splinters flew as bullets ripped through the crates. I dashed toward the side of the pier, my boots pounding on the wet planks. Rains shouted something into his earpiece. I didn't care. I reached the edge, the ocean swirling dark and cold below. Rains appeared behind me, gun raised. "It's over, Kira," he said. "You can't win." I turned slowly to face him. Rain streamed down my face. "Maybe not. But you won't either." Then I stepped backward and fell into the freezing water below. The impact knocked the breath out of me. I kicked desperately, fighting the pull of the current. Lights blurred above me as I sank deeper into the dark. Somewhere in the chaos, my fingers brushed the flash drive still safe in my pocket. And as the world dimmed, one thought pulsed in my mind. They think I'm gone. But I'm not finished yet. The water was like ice, swallowing me whole. My lungs screamed as I fought to reach the surface, kicking with everything I had. The rain above blurred into streaks of silver, distant and unreachable. When my head finally broke through, I gasped for air, every breath burning my throat. Waves slammed against the pier behind me, and I could hear the chaos still raging above. Shouts, sirens, confusion. They thought I was dead.
Perfect.
I let the current carry me toward the shadows beneath the docks, clinging to a floating plank. The city's skyline flickered through the fog, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like control. I wasn't gone yet. When the noise faded and the flashing lights dimmed, I pulled myself onto the rocky shoreline near a cluster of warehouses. My whole body shook from cold, but my grip on the flash drive never loosened. Inside that tiny piece of metal was everything. Proof of the corruption, the fraud, the lives they'd ruined. John's truth. My redemption. I crawled behind a dumpster, collapsed onto the wet ground, and laughed through chattering teeth. They almost had me. A familiar voice broke the silence. Almost. I froze. Out of the mist stepped Dean. His jacket was soaked, his expression unreadable. "You followed me," I said quietly. He shrugged. "You didn't think I'd just let you walk into a trap alone, did you?" Relief washed over me, but something in his eyes made my chest tighten. "Dean, what's wrong?" He hesitated, glancing back toward the road. "We need to move.
Now."
"Who else knows you're here?" His silence was all the answer I needed. "You didn't," I whispered. He swallowed hard. "They were already on to me, Kira."
I didn't have a choice.
"They said they'd kill my sister." I took a step back, my heart shattering. "Dean," he lifted his hands. "Please, just give me the drive. I'll make it look like you died in the water. They'll leave you alone." "Leave me alone?" I snapped. "After what they've done. After John." His jaw clenched. "You don't understand how deep this goes. Northbridge isn't just a company, it's government contracts, international partners. They own people, Kira. They own lives." "Then maybe it's time someone took that power back," I said fiercely. Dean's eyes softened, almost pleading. "Please don't make me do this." I reached slowly into my pocket. For a moment, he thought I was reaching for the drive, until I pulled out the small taser I'd stolen from his glove box earlier. A spark of blue light. He flinched back too late. The jolt sent him sprawling into the mud, unconscious but alive. "I'm sorry, Dean," I whispered. "I know you didn't want this." I ran. Through the rain-soaked alleyways, across the quiet streets. Dawn was breaking now, pale light spilling between skyscrapers. Seattle was waking up. Somewhere out there, Lydia was fighting for her life. Rains was still hunting me. And I had less than an hour before they realized I wasn't at the bottom of the bay. I needed a way to upload the files, publicly, fast, and trace-free. That's when I remembered an old contact from years ago, Jules Navarro, an independent hacker who'd once helped expose a pharmaceutical company's bribery scandal. She owed me a favor. I ducked into a 24-hour laundromat, found an old payphone outside, and dialed a number I hadn't used in 7 years. It rang once.
Twice.
Then, "You've reached Jules." "Leva." "It's Kira Lawson," I interrupted. "I'm alive, and I have something big. Northbridge level big." Silence. Then a low whistle.
"Damn, girl.
"Thought you were dead." "Close enough," I said. "Can you still do secure uploads?" "Always." "Where are you?"
Downtown.
3rd and Western. 10 minutes. Don't talk to anyone. I hung up and leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. 10 minutes. That's all I needed. But fate wasn't going to make it easy. A black SUV turned the corner and slowed. My pulse spiked. The tinted windows rolled down just an inch, enough for me to see a gloved hand holding a walkie-talkie. They'd found me. I bolted into the laundromat, slipping between humming dryers. The few early morning customers barely looked up as I raced through the back door and into the alley. A second SUV screeched to a stop at the other end.
Trapped.
I scanned the alley. To my left, nothing but brick walls. To my right, a rusted fire escape. I climbed.
Fast.
My fingers burned as I hauled myself up 3 stories, just as one of the agents burst through the door below. "On the roof," he yelled. I scrambled over the ledge, panting. The city stretched out below me, glittering and gray. The roof access door slammed open behind me. Rain stepped out, gun in hand, rain dripping from his coat. His face was calm. Too calm. "You don't die easy, do you, Lawson? Not when I've got something worth living for." He smirked. "You really think you can change anything? The people who built Northbridge, people like me, are untouchable." "Maybe," I said. "But truth travels faster than bullets."
He took aim.
I hit send. On my phone screen, the message flashed. "File upload complete, transmitting to Global Press, The Times, CBC, and dozens of independent outlets." His eyes widened. "What did you?" Too late. Dozens of pings lit up across my phone screen. The drive's contents were already in the cloud. The evidence was out. He lunged forward, grabbing my wrist, trying to wrestle the phone away. We struggled near the edge, boots slipping on the slick rooftop. "You think this matters?" he hissed. "They'll bury it. Just like they buried you." "Not this time." I slammed my knee into his side. He staggered back, losing his balance. For a heartbeat, we both teetered on the edge of the roof. Then he fell. I didn't watch him hit. I couldn't. The rain poured harder now, washing away the dirt, the fear, the 20 years of silence. I dropped to my knees and let the storm hit my face. It was over, or so I thought. Hours later, as the city came alive with headlines, "Northbridge fraud exposed by insider leak. Anonymous whistleblower brings down billion-dollar empire," I sat in a small diner on the outskirts of town, wrapped in a borrowed jacket. The waitress refilled my coffee and smiled. "You hear about that company's scandal? Wild stuff." "Yeah," I said softly. "Wild." My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You did good, Kira. But you're not finished yet."
Jay.
I stared at it, my heart catching in my throat.
John.
He was alive. Somewhere out there, he'd survived. Maybe waiting, watching, helping. I smiled faintly, tears mixing with the rain. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I was free. And the world finally knew the truth.